What's up, guys? Welcome to Demo with Mo. I'm your host, Monique Simmons. We'll be discussing dating, engaged, and married objectives from a young Christian's perspective. Are you guys ready? Let's dive in. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to a new episode of Demo with Mo. I am your host, Monique Simmons. Today, we are going to be discussing 5 things that I've learned in therapy. As I'm recording this episode, I saw my therapist today. And you guys know how I feel about therapy. If you've been rocking with me for a while, you know that I am an advocate for therapy. I highly encourage, recommend therapy. So I want to go ahead and tell you guys this even before we jump into today's episode. This is going to be a completely raw episode. I decided today, as I'm recording this, that I wanted to even talk about this. There was no preparation, because usually as I get ready for my podcast episodes, I have planned weeks in advance. I know the subject I'm going to talk about. If I have a guest on, I know the guest that I'm going to be interviewing. I know in advance what I'm going to do. Today was not that day. I started seeing my therapist back in later part of 2022, and I've been putting some real hard work in, and I am seeing the results. And after I saw her, I thought this would be a great thing to talk about, because I know some of my audience members, I know some of you guys are actively in therapy. I know some of you guys may have been in therapy in the past, and you may not need it right now. For whatever reason, you've stopped going. Maybe your circumstances change. Maybe you go in as needed. Maybe your finances change. Maybe your insurance changed. Or maybe you're actively in therapy right now. Or maybe you've been skeptical. Because, that's a real thing. We've talked about that, the stigmas on therapy. If you've never listened to that episode, I encourage you to check that out. But for whatever reason, wherever you are right now in your life on this journey, listening to this episode, I really hope today's episode encourages you. But we're going to be talking about the 5 things I've personally learned in therapy. But before we jump into the episode, there's a few things I want to talk with you guys about. Remember, if you're not already, remember to follow me on Instagram at Demo with Mo Podcast, on TikTok and Facebook at Demo with Mo. Join our private group on Facebook, Dating, Engaged, and Married Objectives, where we talk about all things relationships. And also, I wanted to go ahead and give you guys a heads up for the whole month of May. And yeah, I'm really excited about this. And I hope you guys are excited about this. For the whole month of May, I'm doing a Mother's Day series. Y'all heard me? I'm doing a Mother's Day series. And it's not going to be your usual Mother's Day. I was talking to my therapist today about this. Usually, every year, Mother's Day rolls around. And you hear all of the wonderful things about mothers. You only have one mother. Don't take them for granted. You hear all of the beautiful things, how moms poured into you and how a lot of people have great relationships with their moms. And don't get me wrong, it's such a beautiful thing. The relationship between a mom and a child can be a beautiful thing. I'm talking about an absolutely beautiful thing. It's something every child desires. That's something every child wants. It's such a beautiful thing. But I also want you to think about the people that don't have that. When Mother's Day rolls around every year, I want you to think about the people who have broken relationships with their mom, who moms abandoned them for whatever reason, who moms maybe gave them up for adoption for whatever reason, who moms, they don't speak to their child anymore for whatever reason. There are so many other kinds of relationships that people have with their moms. All relationships between mom and child are not good relationships or beautiful relationships, or these things that we talk about every year. on commercials, in churches. And we even discussed how, because she knows so much about me, but I jokingly said to her sometimes, and this is me being completely vulnerable here, and I love my mom. I love my mom so much, but if you guys have been rocking with me for a while, you know that me and my mom have not always had a great relationship. That relationship was broken for a lot of years for a lot of various reasons. Things have happened and transpired over the years where we did not have that close relationship. So a lot of years when Mother's Day would roll around, when people would have all of these, discussions about mother and daughter and mother-child relationships, I couldn't relate. I felt alone. I could not vibe with it. I couldn't get in on the conversation because I didn't have that. I never understood that. I never felt that way. So me and my therapist had the conversation of how some years, and I don't even want to say jokingly because it's not funny. I'm just going to be honest. It's not funny, and I don't want to make light of it because there's somebody on the other end of this podcast listening to me right now, and there may be tears welling up in your eyes, or they may be falling from your eyes, or your heart may be broken because you even know you don't have that close relationship with your mom, and you may desire that. Or there may be a mom listening to this who desires that close relationship with your child, and you may not have that for whatever reason. But every year when Mother's Day would roll around and I would go shopping for that Mother's Day card, that perfect Mother's Day card that I really would want, and I would pick up those cards, and none of those cards would be able to describe the relationship that my mom and I had. And every year I would go to my car and cry. I told y'all, today's episode was going to be completely raw. It's completely raw. There was no preparation. So you are getting this real, authentic me as I am. But year after year, years where I would have to get a blank card or some basic card to fill in my own words because the cards in the store couldn't even sum up the relationship my mom and I had. And that's the point of me wanting to do this series or this Mother's Day edition for the whole month of May, because I wanted to make sure that when we talked about Mother's Day, I wanted to reach everyone. I didn't want to just have that beautiful Mother's Day episode for those people who had a great relationship with their mom. And don't get me wrong, I love that for you. I love that so much. My heart's desire is that every person could have that with their mom. My heart's desire is that I could have that with my own mom. But if I'm being real and if I'm being honest, I know that everyone does not have that. So when I started out on wanting to do this Mother's Day edition, I wanted to make sure that I'm able to hit everybody, that I'm able to reach every person, that I'm able to target everyone wherever they may be in their relationship with their mom. To the child who does not have a relationship with their mom, to the mom who misses their son or daughter, to that daughter or son-in-law who does not have a relationship with their mom-in-law because they just can't seem to get along, to that bonus mom who never vibed or had a great relationship with that bonus child for whatever reason. I want to make sure I touch on where everyone is, because everyone does not have that great relationship. So for the whole month of May, I will be doing a Mother's Day edition to make sure we can reach everyone. And I really hope you guys are excited about the month of May and this Mother's Day edition, because I really, really am. Like, I really am. And I do want to let you guys know, if you are interested on being a guest for our Mother's Day edition, you can reach out to me by going to the website, demowithmo.com, and fill out the guest intake form, and I will reach out to you directly. But if you're interested on being a guest for that Mother's Day edition, I would love to have you. But without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to a new episode of Demo with Mo. I am your host, Monique Simmons. And today we're going to be discussing 5 things I've learned in therapy. First thing, boundaries. In today's society, you hear this word used so much. And a lot of times it's overused and wrongly used. But in therapy, I learned that I was not doing this well. I learned it's okay to say no. It's okay to not tolerate things that are unhealthy because it's people that you love or family, or because you just don't want to rock the boat in that relationship. And it's also okay to speak up about the things you need in that relationship, no matter who it is, with your parents, with your partner, with your siblings, with whomever. Any person that you're doing a relationship with, it is okay to have boundaries. And I know some of y'all may be like, that's basic. You should know that. But knowing something and doing it is two completely different things. And knowing something, having that head knowledge and knowing that it's okay and you should do it, and it doesn't matter if somebody has a problem with it or an issue with it, two different things. And that was my issue. I knew, logically speaking, that I should have boundaries, that boundaries are okay, that boundaries are healthy. But because I had these dynamics in a lot of these relationships with the people that I love for so long, I didn't know that it was okay for me to now speak up and change the dynamic of these relationships. In my mind, it's been this way for years. How dare I try to come change it now? How dare I try to change the dynamic and the way we do things now? That wouldn't be okay. It wouldn't be okay to rock the boat now. What if they stop talking to me? What if they don't want to be in a relationship with me anymore? What if they cut me off or don't want to be a part of my life anymore? So I thought it was okay to just have unhealthy relationships or just put up and shut up or deal with it just to have them in my life. But I learned that was not okay. And y'all, I did it. I began to set boundaries. And I want to be honest with y'all because I know some of you guys may be listening and you may be afraid to set the boundaries because some of those people may walk away. Some of those people may not talk to you anymore. Some of those people may have problems with you. So you're afraid to, because that was my issue. I was afraid. And I'm going to keep it a buck with you. I'm going to keep it real with you. Some of those people did walk away. Some of those people don't talk to me right now. And that's perfectly okay because I'm in a healthy place. I'm in a much better place. I would rather have healthy relationships in my life with healthy boundaries than have all of those unhealthy relationships with no boundaries or lack of boundaries just to say that those people are in my life. But I didn't know that then. But now that I'm here now, I do know that. And I'm enjoying where I am now. So I encourage you, if you're like me, if you're scared to step out there, if you're scared to speak up, if you're scared to set those healthy boundaries, I encourage you to try it. If you need that third party, like I did, to learn what healthy boundaries look like, to learn how to speak up for yourself in a respectful, because you don't have to be popping off and going off. And I didn't do any of that. You don't have to do any of that. But if you need a third party to learn how to do that, involve a third party. Get you a therapist, a counselor, somebody to help you with the tools to assist you with doing that and to do it well. Second thing I learned, vulnerability, letting people in, realizing the helper needs help too. Y'all, this was a hard one for me. And I still struggle with this. If I'm being completely honest today, if you're listening to this in real time, I still struggle with this, but I am in such a better place than I was when I first started seeing my therapist last year. I'm in a such better place because there was a time where if you asked me how I was doing, I was always good. Even if I was going through some really hard things in my life, I was always good. Now I can actually speak up and say, I'm not good. I'm having a hard time. I need you to pray for me. Even if I don't give you the exact details, because I'm not all the way there yet. But even if I don't give you the exact details, I am allowing people in, the people that I love, the people that I care about, the people that I know care about me. I am letting people in more. I am being more vulnerable. And I have realized, let me not say am, because I have realized that, because I'm a helper. And this was the exact words my therapist used. She said the helper needs help too, because I am the person to show up for everybody else. I am the person that helps everybody else. I'm talking about without question. I will show up for you. I'm showing up. That's who I am as a person. That's just who I am. And my therapist taught me that helpers need help too. And for the longest time, I struggled with that. And something that I learned in therapy, why I struggled with that. But coming from childhood, which we're going to talk about more, but coming from childhood for so long, even as a child, I helped everybody else. I took care of everybody else. And I learned that I had to take care of myself. So along the way, I learned that Monique had to take care of Monique. So I took that into my adulthood and I didn't let that go. I couldn't let that go. So in my mind, even when I needed help, little Monique remembered that Monique took care of Monique. So even when I needed help and I knew I needed help, Monique gonna figure it out because Monique take care of Monique. But Monique takes care of everybody else as well. Nobody else takes care of Monique. Monique takes care of Monique. So that was the other thing I learned, which was a big thing for me. It was like a weight lifted off me, which takes me into the next thing I learned, y'all. This one was huge. Number 3, self-awareness. So I looked this up. Self-awareness means conscious knowledge of one's own character, feelings, motives, and desires. Let me play that back for you. I'm going to spin the block on that. Conscious knowledge of one's own character, feelings, motives, and desires. This one was huge for me. Okay, so I am big on accountability. You will hear me use that word a lot on this podcast. You will see me post a lot if you follow me on any of my platforms. If you're in the podcast group, if you know me in real life, you will hear me use that word a lot because it's important to me. I hold myself accountable and I expect people that I'm in a relationship with to hold themselves accountable as well. I do. I'm being honest. I do. But even with accountability, you got to have self-awareness because you got to be aware of the things that you do and who you are. And why I say the last point took me into this point because for a long time, I thought that I was vulnerable. For a long time, I thought that I was letting people in, but I was not. So I could not be self-aware in that area, or I couldn't hold myself accountable in that area. Let me tell y'all something. I told y'all this episode was going to be raw. I told you it's going to be raw. So, you know that my husband and I are in marriage therapy. I told you, if you've been rocking with me for a while, you know these things. So throughout this episode, I may reference things. And for those of you who may be new to the podcast, or this is the first episode you've ever listened to of Demo with Mo, when I say things, you may be like, I didn't know this, or what is she talking about? You would have to go back and listen to previous episodes to kind of get the full context of what I'm saying to really understand it all. But for those of you who've been rocking with me, you know these things. So my husband and I are in marriage counseling. And my husband used to say this all the time. I wish she would be vulnerable. I wish she would open up. I wish she would let me in. All of these things. But I wasn't self-aware. Y'all. So I could not hold myself accountable in this area because I wasn't even aware that I was not. In my mind, I am being vulnerable. In my mind, I am letting you in. What is this man talking about? This is why self-awareness is so important, because if you're not aware of what you're doing or what you're not doing and who you are, who your character is, your motives, your emotions. If you're not aware of these things, you can be thinking you're doing something or not doing something when people say you're doing it or not doing it. And you'll be completely blind to it. But when you're self-aware, you recognize what you're doing or not doing. So when somebody calls you out on it or they say it, you can hold yourself accountable. You can be like, you're right. I haven't been letting you in. I have not been vulnerable with you. I'm sorry. I could really do better in this area. I have been lacking in this. But when I'm not self-aware, when I think I've been letting you in and I have been vulnerable, now I'm going to get defensive. Now I'm going to put a wall up. How dare you say I'm not vulnerable? How dare you say I haven't been letting you in? I am vulnerable. Don't you say I'm not vulnerable. Don't say I'm not letting you in when I know I'm letting you in. This is why self-awareness is so important. And my therapist taught me this. Because when I began to share things with her, my background, how I grew up, how I respond to things now, even in my adulthood, she taught me and explained to me and showed me that I was not being vulnerable, that I was not allowing people in, because when things would happen, I would keep things to myself. I wouldn't share things, but my reasonings made sense. I was being protective of the people that I love. I didn't want to cause them any hurt. I didn't want to bring them any pain. I was trying to protect their feelings because I'm a rescuer. I'm a helper. I want to be there for them. I want to show up for them. I want to take on the negative feelings that they have. I don't want them to take on mine. So all of the things that I learned from my childhood and growing up, I took all of these things into my adulthood, but those things were not working for me. I couldn't do those things in my marriage, in my relationship with my kids, in a relationship with friends and family and my loved ones. I could not do these things, but I was not self-aware. So I didn't recognize. I didn't recognize when I thought I was being vulnerable, but I really wasn't. When I thought I was letting people in, but I really wasn't. I was holding stuff in and keeping things with myself that I should have been sharing. Because when I shared it, people would feel closer to me. And when they felt closer to me, that was allowing them in. But when I thought that me keeping it to myself, I was protecting them, and me protecting them made them feel not close to me. It felt like I was hiding something from them, or not wanting them to be a part of my life, or not letting them in, which in return is not being vulnerable and not letting them in. And that was not my motive, and that's not what I wanted, but that's what I was doing. Y'all, I just went around the world to tell y'all how important self-awareness is. We really have to recognize who we are, man. I'm talking about for real who we are, what we're doing, our patterns, our triggers, our motives, our thoughts. Y'all, I could stay on this point. I could do a whole podcast episode just on self-awareness, because next point, which is a great segue from self-awareness. Number 4, fourth thing I learned from therapy. I couldn't run from my childhood. All of those things followed me into adulthood. I want y'all to sit with me in that just for a minute. Because I told you this was going to be a raw episode today. Completely raw. I want y'all to sit in there for just a minute, because I know some of y'all are listening, and some of y'all was trying to run from y'all childhood too. Some of y'all probably said, I can't wait to get grown and get gone. I can't wait to get up out this house. I can't wait to get from this mess. I can't wait to do what I want to do. I can't wait to start my own family. I can't wait. I'm going to be nothing like you. I can't wait. My kids don't know I love them. I can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait. I don't know what your I can't wait is. If your I can't wait was none of those, I know you got an I can't wait. But you can't run from your childhood. And I learned that in therapy, because a lot of us, when things happen, when we experience hard stuff in life, and it ain't even got to be something like dire, but anything that triggers us, or brings up that old pain, those feelings, the way we felt when we was a child, anything that brings up how we felt back then, I'm talking about anything. It could be the way somebody looks at you, the way somebody raises their voice to you, the way somebody spends money, the way they didn't return your phone call, the way your partner shuts down, or the way your partner is clingy. Because this is a relationship podcast, most of the things we're talking about is always going to be focused on relationships, but it doesn't have to only be focused on romantic relationships. It could be relationships with your children. It can be relationships on your job. It could be relationships with your family. But what I'm saying to you is when stuff happens, a lot of times you're not only responding to what's happening in the moment. A lot of the times, the way we're responding is how we feel. And how we feel is not only what we're feeling because of what's happening right now. I have responded to my husband on it because we've been married almost 13 years. And in our 13 years of marriage, I have responded to him and things that have went on between us, and it had nothing to do with what was going on in that moment. I remember how I felt from way back when. I remember how I felt when I wasn't heard as a child. I remember how I felt when I felt neglected as a child. I remember how I felt when my parents were getting divorced, when they were separated. What I'm saying is, you can't run from your childhood. Those things will follow you into your adulthood. A lot of times, the way we respond is not our adult person that's responding. When we're hurt, when we're sad, when we're upset, it's that little person in us. Yeah, we're in this grown adult body, man or woman, whoever you are listening. Yeah, you may be in this grown man body, this grown woman body. But a lot of us, because it's not all of us, but a lot of us who have experienced trauma, pain from our past, from our childhood, it's usually that little person in us that's responding, or who's feeling that, or who's hurt again. So we can't run from those things. We have to deal with them. We have to acknowledge them. I'll never forget back in November, you guys that follow me, every November, I do a self-care challenge for the whole month of November to celebrate my birthday. And I had just started therapy before my self-care challenge month. And during that month, my therapist, one of my assignments for my homework was to write a letter to the 16-year-old me. And y'all, I had put it off for a couple weeks, and I finally did it because it was one of my self-care challenges that I challenged for the self-care challenge. I challenged myself to do something every day for the whole month of November for me, for myself. And one of the days I didn't put it off because it was a challenge. You know, that's the whole point of the challenge. You got to do something for you. And this day I didn't put it off. I wrote the letter to myself, and I just boo-hooed. And I'm talking about, one of those, I feel like everybody should do this at least. I really feel like you should do it at least once a month, but y'all do y'all, y'all do y'all. But I feel like you should have one of them good, ugly cries. I'm talking about one of them ugly cries where where you can't even like get your breaths together. Like, the one where your chest start coming out, y'all know what I'm saying. But I was like boo-hooing. And I wasn't crying for the adult me. I was crying for 16-year-old Monique. Because I remember as I'm writing the letter to her, and I won't tell you about the letter. That's for her. It was for her. But I remember as I was writing the letter exactly, and I'm feeling it right now. OMG. I told y'all today's episode is completely raw. So throughout this episode, y'all may hear me crying or hear my voice break a little bit. And I'm not apologizing for that at all. I remember I used to apologize for crying all the time. She gone. I'm not apologizing for crying anymore. I'm not. But this episode is raw. Okay, so I remember as I was writing a letter to her, I remember feeling exactly how I felt at 16. And for so long, I pushed her down. I pushed that little 16-year-old girl down every time she would come up. And y'all, OMG. OMG. And for y'all who listening, whenever I say OMG, I'm saying, oh my goodness, because and I'm only saying this for my people who may be thinking that I'm saying, I don't take God's name in vain. So, because I always get on kids, the teenagers, I always be saying, oh my God, all the time. And I always get on them like, don't take God's name in vain. Like, he's so wonderful and awesome. Like, don't just throw his name out here all willy-nilly. So whenever you hear me say OMG, I'm saying, oh my goodness. But yeah, I'm literally putting pieces together as I'm talking to y'all. But I used to apologize for crying all the time because as a kid, whenever I cried, when something happened, the people in my life would be like, what you crying for? That's nothing to cry about. So going into my adulthood, I would always tell myself, that's nothing to cry about. Why are you crying? So as I'm writing the letter, I remember exactly how I felt when I was 16. And for so long before writing that letter, I pushed all of that down. When I was hurt, 16-year-old me would show up. It's okay. I tell her it's okay. Push on down. When I was sad, stuff happened me worthy of being sad about. She'll come up, push on down some more. It's okay. We gonna be okay. That was my favorite line to her. It's okay. We gonna be okay. It's okay. It's okay. And that's because I learned that in my childhood. Make sure everybody else straight. Everybody else around you, all of the adults that's only worried about them. They so caught up in all of the stuff that they have going on. They don't see you. They don't see how the decisions that they're making is affecting you. They haven't asked you, but you're going to be okay. Don't worry about it. Just keep making sure everybody else good. Just stay quiet. Just keep going. You're going to be okay. And I just programmed myself to just think like that. And I kept going that way for years, all the way to my adulthood. So that 16-year-old girl never had a voice. Not for real. She would act out. She would have sex. She would do stuff she had no business doing. Hang with the wrong people. Do all of the things so you can see her. You can notice that something's wrong. But they didn't see. So she learned that she had to take care of herself. And it's going to be okay. But when I started therapy, I learned that I could not run from that anymore. That I didn't have to keep her quiet anymore. That I could give her a voice. That I could be honest about exactly how she felt. And that it would be okay. That it would really be okay. That I could give her a voice and that it would be okay. Because for so long, I thought that I would have to be quiet for it to be okay. But I learned in therapy that I could give her a voice. And once I learned that I could give her a voice, I learned even as an adult that I could have a voice as well. And that it would be okay. Because remember earlier, I talked to y'all about, I learned about boundaries, speaking up for myself, because I didn't do that. Because I didn't know that I could speak up for myself and it would be okay. But that goes back into you can't run from your childhood. All those things will follow you into your adulthood. No matter how ugly, how scary, how dark it may look, it may feel, you can face it head on and you can deal with it. And it will be okay. It will be okay. I am facing some stuff head on, scared. I'm talking about straight scared. I'm doing it. I'm doing it afraid, but I'm doing it. I'm doing the work, but I'm not running anymore. I've given that girl a voice, and you can't shut her up now. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but she has a voice now. And I told her, we are officially okay now. And not just that okay that I was trying to tell her for so long, like that okay, like the go along to get along okay, but the okay now where you thriving, honey, you happy, you are good, like you really good. Not just that kind of good, people say to just tell you what you want to hear, but you really good. So don't run no more, y'all. If you're listening to this and you're running, don't run anymore. Face it, man. Face it head on, because it ain't going nowhere. That little person in you ain't going anywhere. Give them a voice. 5, last but not least. Woo, y'all. I'm not responsible for what others do or don't do. I am only responsible for me. I ain't even got to dig deep in that one. That's self-explanatory. But y'all, this was hard for me. I held on to some stuff. I held on to some stuff for years. I held on to a lot of stuff for years. And stuff that I had never said out loud to anyone. Not even to my husband. I held on to some decisions that other people made that I thought it was because of me. It was my fault. They did what they did because of something that I did, or I wasn't good enough, or I should have done more, or I made a whole bunch of reasons of how it was my fault, which is crazy, which is completely crazy. Me, my 34-year-old self, no, logically speaking, I know it's not my fault, but my body, how I responded, how I lived, how I thought for so many years. I'm talking about so many years. I have lived my life as if those decisions that other people made, grown adults, decisions that they made, it was my fault. But I learned in therapy, I'm not responsible for what others do or they don't do. I am only responsible for me. And that was a burden I did not have to carry anymore. And I'm going to be honest, it was a heavy burden that I carried for a long time. A long time. And it was so freeing to hear my therapist sit across from me and say that. Monique, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And I want to tell you, whoever you are on the other end of this listening who may be carrying that same burden that I was carrying, it's not your fault. The only person that you are responsible for is you. And if you are listening to this, and maybe there's somebody in your life or people in your life, and maybe you made a decision and they think something you did is their fault, I encourage you to let them know that it's not their fault. I've never received that. Let me say that I've never received that. And I probably will never receive that. And I don't need it. I'm just going to be honest. I don't need that. But if you are listening to this and you know somebody in your life may be carrying it because of you, I encourage you, let them know that it's not their fault. It wasn't their fault. And just to add another thing to that, you may never, and I mean, you may never get an apology. You may never get accountability. You may never get, I was wrong and I'm sorry, from other people that were involved that hurt you or disappointed you or caused pain or trauma or any of that in your life. Because this was part of my work in therapy. You may never get that. And again, this goes back to my last point. You're not responsible for what others do or don't do. The only person you're responsible for is you. So your responsibility in that, even if you never get that from the other people or the other person that's involved, your responsibility in that is being able to move on and take accountability for your life, for your freedom, for your joy, for your peace, and doing the work for you. And especially if you got other people in your life, if you're married, if you're in a relationship, if you have kids, your babies, because the things that we don't deal with, they impact the people that we're in relationship with, our partners, our spouses, our kids, our friends, our loved ones. It impacts them too. So even if you never get that apology, that accountability, what someone has done to you that affected you, if you never get that for them, I encourage you to take hold of your own journey, your own life, and do the work for yourself, to forgive for yourself. Because the only person you're responsible for is you. So yeah, that's my 5 things I learned in therapy. I hope this episode has helped you, has encouraged you, has blessed you wherever you are in your life, on your journey. If you're in therapy, if you're thinking about therapy, if you've been cautious about therapy, skeptical about therapy, wherever you are, I really hope this has helped you today. I love you guys as always, but remember, God loves you so much more. I'm talking about so much more. I'll see you guys next week. Bye. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Follow me on Facebook at Demo with Mo. If you have any questions you would like answered here live on my podcast, email them to me at demowithmo@gmail.com. That's DEMOWITHMO@gmail.com.